We have a roll call, please.
Director Roddick.
Here.
Director Lohman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Present.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Slater Carter.
Present.
Chair Dye.
Here.
I apologize for being tardy. I had a really slow computer. I just couldn't get Zoom to load. Sorry about that.
It's fine. We're glad you're here. Kishan, could you introduce the staff members who are here, who are present on the call?
I have Tim Costello, Supervisor of Treatment and Field Operations. I have George Evans. Where did he go? He was here a few minutes back. Maybe he's having trouble with Zoom.
Outside in front of the building?
I don't know. Wherever he is, there he is. I can see him now. No video, but yes, he's a finance officer. Then we have Susie from our administration department. And we have Gabriel, a lead operator from operations. We have Sonia Andish, operator from the operations department. And of course, we have Jeremy Youngrise, General Counsel. And this is me, Kishan Prativadi, General Manager.
Great. And I see we have some anniversaries to announce.
Yes, we have 2 anniversaries in the month of September. We have Gabriel Aguilar, lead operator, who's completed 20 years. And you have Sonia Andish, operator 2, who's completed 5 years. So I would pass it on to Tim Costello to talk about Gabriel.
I was on mute. There you go. Right on. What can I say about Gabe? I mean, it's hard to believe he's been there for 20 years. He's like, Gabe is the guy that somehow he has everything in it. He remembers where everything is and what everything does. I mean, I am absolutely amazed sometimes when I talk to him, the obscure little things that he just remembers. And it's like, how do you even, I've even told him that. How the hell do you even remember that? I don't even know what I did yesterday half the time. And he remembers stuff from like years ago. It is absolutely amazing to me. But it's really been, a pleasure working with him. And hopefully I retire before he does, because I don't know what I would do if he's not there. It would be just bad. So anyhow, 20 years, Gabe, that's quite an accomplishment. Congratulations to you, sir. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Congratulations from all of us. Well done.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and it's still a pleasure to work for Sam and to serve the Coastside community. Thanks again.
Thank you, Gabe.
For hard work.
And thank you, Gabe. When I started paying attention to Sam, I was told if I ever wanted to know anything, you were the man to talk to.
Thanks again.
No offense, Tim.
And then we have Sonia Andish. Susie is going to talk about her.
Yeah. On September 19th of 2016, you walked into the wonderful world of wastewater here at SAM. You came to us with an eagerness to learn everything you could about the wastewater industry, an interest that might have been sparked by your sister, who is also an operator at a plant in Florida. But whatever it was that sparked your interest, you came to us with that eagerness and passion to learn everything you possibly could to be the best at what you do. Sonia, as being the only other woman working at the plant, I know it isn't always easy, but I want you to know that you are a rock star. I see how you ask questions and you listen to the answers given, and I see how your brain just soaks it all up. You, my dear, are a huge asset to our family here at SAM, and I commend you for your passion, dedication, and your eagerness to be the best. And that is a hat that you wear very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie. And
from all of us. Yes.
I would like to take this opportunity, however, because there are some things that need to be discussed. So I'm just going to take up a little bit of your time. On Saturday, I am deeply concerned about my safety and the potential dangerous situation that I was put in. Real quick, the water tank, number 2 water tank, was not working. I am on call. It's not connected to SCADA, so I didn't know that this was a problem. I came into the plant around 5:45 to start my shift. An operator was already there in uniform, not scheduled, working on their car. I asked the operator if he understood what was going on with this 1-2 tank, and he said that he could not help me. Understood. Next, this number 1-2 water tank has been compromised. It hasn't worked in a very long time. And I know every time there's a problem with it. Calcon has been working on it. Sometimes the alarm's cleared. I have an RDT to run that needs number 1, number 2 water. I have up to 8 totes, 250 gallons each to fill up because there's foam out of control in that mixed liquor basin. I am the only operator on the weekends. I am on call. So if I need help, I can't call myself. So I was able to, the RDT failed. The RDT is not hooked up to SCADA. I didn't know it failed. I can't fill up these totes because I don't have number 1 water. At this point, I am in the rears. I did ask, I have the phone, the timing of the phone. I texted all 3, my supervisor, the general manager, and another operator needing help. I did not hear from my supervisor. Well, I did hear from him, and the supervisor's suggestion was, if you cannot troubleshoot this, call the on-call person. I texted him back explaining that I was the on-call person. Nothing else. No help, no follow-through, nothing. Thankfully, Kishan called. Replied telling supervisor I was on call. So now the RDT has failed, the totes, there's no water to flush the toilet, to wash your hands. At 1:30, text another who was at the plant. He had gone home to see if he had any idea how to help. He could not help. The other operator is out of town, and it is not his day to work. Again, my supervisor has not contacted me to solve this problem. Thankfully, my general manager does, and he gets in touch with Calcon. Now, Brandon from Calcon is troubleshooting this. I am asked to climb up to the top of this tank by myself. When the RDT fails, that is 480 amps of electricity that you have to troubleshoot by yourself. Again, no help from my supervisor. I'm told Brandon and I troubleshoot, and the deal is that the tank actually is completely empty. And so now, in order to troubleshoot this, we need to fill up the tank, which is 7,850 gallons. Using the bypass, because we figure out it's the solenoid that's not working. That is not something that an operator can solve. So this is going down around 2 p.m. I continue on with my day. Around 6, it's 4 o'clock now, and I'm realizing I need to continue to let this tank fill up, because the only way to troubleshoot this is to let the tank overflow. And then we know how much is in it. It's 6 p.m. I text Brandon and say, I'm still here filling up the tank. He texts me back saying that he will be there on Sunday with the operator on Sunday to fix the problem. This is at 6. I asked him, when did you find out about this? other plan. And this was around 4 p.m. So now I have been at the plant from 4 until 6, waiting for this tank to fill up. Meanwhile, my supervisor has worked out a plan with Brandon and the other operator, not telling me. I texted him. He never responded. By the time I get home at 6:30 at night, he did call. I did not pick up the phone because I didn't think that that would be a good idea. 7:30 at night, the other operator calls me and says that he's going to be there to watch this tank fill up. There has been no follow through, nothing from the supervisor. So the supervisor has demonstrated this isn't the first time that this on-call lack of backup has happened. And I have gone to the union rep and I have gone to HR. So this isn't the first time, but it's going to be the last time because that job is extremely dangerous. It cannot be done by yourself. Even on a good day, you shouldn't. And the condition of the plant right now is out of control. So my supervisor has demonstrated that operator safety is not a priority. And so I'm going to take the steps to ensure my safety.
Okay. Sonia?
Well, thank you, Sonia. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may, this is not the venue for airing grievances, but we'll investigate and then I'll get back to you on that, okay? Thank you very much.
This isn't a grievance. It's a matter of time before someone gets very hurt or dies. So I want to know from the board how this is going to be addressed. Good night.
Sam will get back to you, but we cannot respond to this right now tonight.
Yeah, so there's a Sonia, there's a process for, and you've raised issues that we'll need to look into, right? You've raised safety issues and some other ones that require us to follow a specific process. And so we'll need to do that. But thank you for making that information available to us.
Please do it as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So going forward, I am not going to work by myself on Saturday alone. Gabe has always been my mentor. So I wish to change my schedule to shadow him Tuesday through Friday. Enough. And before I go, that day, we are doing this pedometer where we're tracking how many steps we do as kind of a fun competition. That day, I walked 11.3 miles at that plant.
Sonia, thank you for your heartfelt testimony and comments today and bringing this up. By the
I am heartbroken.
We are not allowed to respond to you by law, but we've heard you, and I'm sure that there will be a response. Jeremy and Kishan, if you want to speak to this, just not to the substance, but the fact that we will respond to this and pay attention to the issues, very serious issues that you've raised. Okay. Someone.
As I stated, Sonia, we'll need to talk to you. You've given a lot of information right now, right? But we'll probably need to talk to you, record the specifics of kind of when and where. I mean, there was a lot that was presented just now. And there's some investigation that generally has to be done where there's, alleged safety violations and other types of issues of that nature. So I'll coordinate with Kishan and we'll make sure the right steps are taken.
Thank you.
All right. And congratulations on your anniversary. I know that's kind of pales at this moment, but all right, moving on. Public comment for items not on the agenda. You're speaking as a member of the public, Matthew. Oh, your hand's gone down. All right. It looks like I have one member of the public who wishes to speak on items not on the agenda. That's David Westendorf.
Good evening, everybody. This is David Westendorf. I'm speaking on behalf of Jetty Wave Distillery here in the Princeton Harbor area. My comments are in continuation of comments that have been made in both previous board meetings, as well as during the workshop, as well as emails correspondence that I've made to those that are present in the management team and legal representation of the SAM management team. And I apologize for the redundant nature of these comments, but it's because I've not gotten clarity. I've not gotten responses back from Keyshawn, the management team, that I'm stating these again for the public record and stating these hopefully with the anticipation, expectation that I do get a return email with the results that I see. Number one, Keyshawn has made public claims a number of times claiming that the JettyWave BOD test was quote unquote off the chart, that his instrumentation was inadequate to provide an accurate gauge as to the BOD levels. And I've asked Keyshawn in email a number of times that have not gotten a response asking for the nature of the results, the methodology of the results, the instrumentation, the machinery of the results. And I request respectfully that either Keyshawn substantiates these claims or ceases to make these claims anymore in the public domain. It's counter and contrary to JettyWave and the other businesses that have been targeted. It represents a subjectivity that is not part of the government-public alliance. And another example of this is in the late invitation that went out last week to the board meeting that was called on Thursday. We received notice about 27 hours in advance. Unfortunately, did not have schedule flexibility to be able to attend that. So here we are with a deadline of October 1st, 4 days from now, and we continue to lack the overall context of the BOD program. We do not understand how $300 has turned into $1,000. We don't understand the frequency and the schedule of testing. Our perception is that this might be $1,000 a month, $12,000 to a business that has not even sold a single drop of our liquor output is crushing to our existence, and it does represent an existential threat. So our request that we would request that the board of the management of SAM ponder and hopefully respond to is a overall proposal for what this program is going to look like with respect to all of the businesses that will be targeted, the dates for the remaining businesses that are expected to be targeted, any type of cost allocation that will be spread across, creating economies of scale for all of those that are participating, and a higher degree of transparency with respect to this overall program. JettyWave.
Hey, David, I need you to wrap it up, but thank you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
if I'm at 3 minutes, I respectfully cede the microphone and thank everybody for this generous 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Matthew, you have your hand up. Thank you, David.
Oh, no, sorry, I should have lowered that again.
Okay. Any other members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? All right. Moving on to the agenda items. Start with the consent agenda, which is approve the minutes of September 13th. A revised version was circulated, so I think we'll be looking at the minutes as amended. Approved disbursements for September 27th, 2021, and the monthly revenue and expense report for the period ending August 31st, 2021. Does anyone want to pull anything from the agenda? Matthew?
I don't want to pull this from the agenda, but I'd like to make a comment on the monthly review and expense report. My every other month comment that GCSD is still shown as owing approximately $28,000, well over 6 months. And this has been going on for literally years. And I keep getting assured that this will be straightened out. And I'm going to keep bringing it up until it does get straightened out. And I'll point out an oddity. At one point, Rocket Farms is shown as being in arrears exactly the same amount to the penny, $27,994.23, which is what it's claimed GCSD owes. So that could be a coincidence, but it's a really strange one. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything they want to pull or comment on the consent agenda? Can I have a motion? Someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent.
Yeah.
Second.
Right.
I think you did have a comment from Mr. Evans, Chair Dye.
Yes, even I had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, George, if you'd like to make
Go
it.
ahead, George, please.
Yeah, this has happened once before. I think, Director Clark, if you look at the report, I know it's kind of small. Rocket Farm happens to be the last customer on the accounts receivable trial balance, and you might be looking at the total as opposed to Rocket Farm's amount, because Rocket Farm never has that amount. So you might be looking at one column, the aging column, and that would be my guess.
Yep, I'd like to clarify further George's statement. You're absolutely right. George, Rocket Farms owes $616.55 currently. The total in the aging report is $27,994.23. So that is the total amount. So it's I know it's a little confusing, but it's the same thing, Director Clark, that you had got confused a couple of meetings back. It's the same thing. So it's nothing to do with Rocket Farms owing us that large amount. It just owes us $616.55.
I don't have the paper in front of me. What's the total that's shown as aged under GCSD?
And the GCSD greater than 120 days is $27,994.23.
Okay, all right. That's what it says. GCSD owes. You just said Rocket Farms owes 616 or whatever you said, and you're saying that at the bottom, that's the total that's owed, and it's actually the same amount that GCSD purported owes.
No, wait a minute. Let me confirm, please. Rocket Farms owes $616.55, and that is current. If you take greater than 120 days, Rocket Farm owes $0. So the total amount owed by any agency for greater than 120 days is $27,994.23, and that is pertaining to GCSD only.
And I'll ask again, why is it still there?
Well, to answer that question, why it's still there, it's been going back and forth between SAM and GCSD, and a considerable amount of time has been spent. And now staff has taken a decision, which we'll bring it to the finance committee and allow them to take a decision and then bring it back to the board at a later stage.
I'll just say I have seen the cash checks that covered this.
Okay, whatever. We are investigating into that. We'll take it to the finance committee and then sort it out. Okay?
We'll bring it back. It'll come to the finance committee and come back to the board for resolution.
Yes, that is the intent.
I know it's a long-standing issue, so it'll be great to get it resolved. All right. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Thank you, Matthew. All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Radek? You're muted.
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Slater Carter?
Yes.
Chair Dye?
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, moving on. Regular business. First is the matter of the resolution which sets the time and place and the rules for our meetings. This was just put on the agenda essentially because we had a meeting with a lot of public input, and it wasn't clear that people understood that our meetings end at 9. That was on for discussion, but in the course of discussion, there were some suggestions for modifying it, cleaning it up, taking out one of the review things for a date that had already passed, which I don't think is controversial, and then potentially changing our start time. So do members of the board want to weigh in with an opinion on the question of when we start our meetings? Anyone want to speak to that? Deborah Penrose.
Yeah, the earlier the better. I would be happy to start them at 5. But anything earlier than 7.
All right. Anyone else want to speak to this? Catherine?
Yeah, I think 7 works For those of us who live up north, 5 o'clock puts us driving down there, or even at 6 in the middle of traffic. And I have a personal life. I don't mind devoting my evenings to Sam, but my daytime hours until 6 o'clock are otherwise occupied. For those of you who live closer, it might not be a big deal, but I have stuff that I need to get done at home before I start the SAM board meeting, and 7 o'clock works. So I say, let's keep it the way it is.
All right. Anything further? Director Reddick.
Yes, 5 o'clock is too early for me. And the reason is my last Monday of the month is a San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District meeting that typically goes from 4. It could be out as early as 5:30, but usually it's more like, 4 to 6. So the earliest I could start, that fourth Monday of the month would be like 6:30. So if that would be helpful, I could start at 6:30. That gives me time to get a snack between meetings.
Anyone else want to weigh on this? Is that a hand from Director Lohman, or yes?
Yeah, I think it looks like they're trying to schedule like a half-hour closed session. I think that could have some awkward situations where you don't finish, or we could have consultants coming in for an early meeting and then them having to get off and come back again when we're done with the regular meeting. So I'm in favor of just leaving things the way they are for now.
Right. I'm flexible. I would be willing to start earlier, but at 6:30, not too much earlier. And it hasn't happened that often that we've really bumped up against the 9 o'clock deadline. The problem is that when we have a lot of community input, that can be a short deadline. But hopefully, if that happens again, we'll be in a situation where we could perhaps extend the deadline by a vote for longer. So I'm willing to support keeping it the way it is. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this? Matthew?
Yeah, I like the 7 to 9 o'clock regime we're under. I could do 6:30, but that makes dinner time very rushed, and also sometimes getting home, or when we have to go back to in-person, getting to SAM, sometimes difficult for me. So I could live with 6:30, but I like this current setup.
I'm hearing a pretty strong support for 7. I see hands up again, or still? Deborah, Catherine.
Yeah, mine's up again. For several years before I was a member of the SAM board, I came for the audience, and the meeting would start and then they'd go into closed session. And so everybody who wanted to participate in the meeting then had to go back out, and including consultants, and hang around in the front of the office just outside of Susie's desk. And yes, the chocolate was nice. I think we all gained weight from that, but it was really just I thought it showed a lack of thoughtfulness towards the public. And
no one's
also
proposing to do that again. So
we had proposed at the last meeting, it's my recollection, that we might have closed session first.
We're saying 6 to 7, and that the regular meeting would always start at 7. So people would come at 7. That was the thinking.
Okay.
I'm not pushing that. I'm just saying that was the thinking, and that if the closed session went longer, it would go at the end of the regular meeting. But you're right. Then those people would have to stand around during that time. So
exactly.
That's the current proposed action as reflected in the draft resolution. So it would be a closed session that starts at 6:30, and then an open session that would begin at 7. If the closed session is not complete, it would have to be at the end of the open session items.
Can I just poll the board?
Sure.
How many would
If
prefer
we just
to
want a
start?
quick motion and just vote and end this.
Yes. Well, I was going to do that and then ask for a motion, but how many would be happiest if it starts at 7? Would be okay with starting at 7 as we do now? I'm okay with that. Okay, can we get a motion to that effect?
So move.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please? And wait, and incorporated into this motion, we are making some other revisions to this resolution. We're taking out the requirement that it be revised at a date specific, which has already passed, right, Jeremy? And
Yes.
we're just cleaning it up a little bit. So
Yeah, and also would we still have a close? So would the closed session still begin at 6:30, or would we just begin at 7
It's not my
o'clock?
motion.
Okay, so just be status quo essentially as we are now.
Yes.
And the closed session would be at the end, or are we going to be silent on that?
That would be my standard motion. People can vote and do something else if they want. That's fine. My motion was to change nothing.
Status quo.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can revise the resolution to reflect. The board can direct us to revise the resolution to reflect to continue status quo.
Okay. I guess, is there any further discussion of the motion? All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Ravit,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose. You're muted.
Yes.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye.
Great. I mean, I think it's good to clean up the resolution, and if it's working more or less for everybody, then let's not change it. Moving
And
on.
thank you to the city council members. I
Just got
appreciate
kind of a
that.
generic question around this. Do we have any further information on future meetings in October and what the process will be and whether they have to be live or how many people live or any update on that kind of situation?
Matter of fact, we do, but if it's okay, why don't we wait till the attorney's report?
Okay.
Because I plan to cover that.
That's fine.
Matthew and Catherine, you still have hands up. Did you want to?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I have a comment. I think it would be good to have some flexibility on how each meeting is arranged. It occurs to me that occasionally there are things that we learn in closed session that bear on things that we are going to vote on or have already voted on in the meeting. And it would be good to be able to have counsel in his judgment advocate for having such items that might affect the vote before the vote. So,
yeah, actually, great point, Director Clark. The way it's set up right now in the resolution, the chair is able to reorder the sequence, so we should be able to. That shouldn't be an issue.
good.
Good point, Matthew. Thank you. All right. Anything else on this item? All right, moving on to review and receive the financial report for Q4 fiscal year 2021, budget versus actual.
Yep. So the budget versus actual for the fourth quarter of the 2021 was discussed with the finance committee a couple of weeks back. And it was also modified to the finance committee's comments. And now we are presenting it to the board, and we have Peter Medina from Ace Consultants, who's here with us, who's going to make a short presentation and will also be available for answering any questions. So Peter, I'm going to allow you so that you can allow you to share your screen, and you can go ahead and get started, please.
All right.
What do you mean?
Thank you, guys. Okay, pulling up the PowerPoint. Okay. Uh-oh. Share screen. And we're going to begin this slideshow. All right. How's my audio? To me, am I getting some feedback? Is it okay for you guys?
Sounds fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we've gone through this presentation before for previous quarters. This is Q4 of fiscal year 2021, covering the fiscal year end 6/30/2021. Please note that this presentation is before recording fiscal year end closing entries. So this is unaudited, and like I said, this is pre-closing entries, so we don't have the year-end accruals or the capitalization of various assets and compensated absences or the various entries that are booked with the close. So with that, we will move on. So the purpose of this is in reality just to show as much transparency as we can to both the finance committee and the board on a quarterly basis, how we're performing as compared to budget. So I said, we go through this as a committee and was our finance team as well as with the finance committee on a monthly basis going over financials. The board packet comes to you guys as well for you guys to review, but this presentation goes more into depth as far as the various variances that are occurring throughout the fiscal year. So overall, to provide as much transparency as we can to the committee and as well as to the board. So going through, the graph here really just shows in total O&M and collections revenues as compared to expenditures. And we'll see, yes, we are not, the ideal state of being 100% on both sides. Yes, we don't have that. And we're going to discuss more of why as we go through. So on a revenue standpoint, we are sitting pretty well for the most part. We are at 100% for the ones that we have complete control over, and that is O&M and collections, and as well as the capital contributions. We bill out throughout the entire fiscal year. At the budget time, we have our fixed amount and we break it into 12 equal assessments, and those are billed and recorded as revenue throughout the entire fiscal year. The pieces that we don't have are other income as well as interest income. Interest, LAIF rate of return just has not been what was expected during the budget process. It's been about half, okay? And the other piece is other income, and that was about a year ago. SAM stopped accepting shipments of leachate from Republic. So that was a known factor that we knew we were going to have to deal with, but that revenue is down. So moving forward, we go into our review of the treatment expense. This expense is 14% over budget. This slide really highlights the accounts which have the largest over budget. Within here, there are a number of transactions, but so there are more accounts that go into the treatment line item, but these are the main accounts that have over budget. And like I said, your guys' board packet, as well as the next slide will provide more detail as far as the individual transactions which make up that over budget. I said it's over budget by about 14%. This slide really goes through and details what those expenditures are. Going through here, you'll note a few of these expenditures are capitalized. They were booked in a treatment category, but they are items which can be capitalized and were so at the end of the fiscal year. So as I said, when I first started, this was pre-close, and so these were just capturing expenditures as they occurred. These are the major items or the larger expenditures throughout the fiscal year. We move now into admin expenses. Admin expenses, I said, this piece here, we were 10% over budget. The big one here are the employment legal fees. It was an item that wasn't budgeted for last fiscal year. And so it was an incurred expense, $98,000. We paid for it, and that's the biggest piece there. The other piece here you'll see are the insurance premiums. It's over budgeted by over $50,000, but that was a closing entry is to capture a portion of these expenditures which are a prepaid. The way that this policy works is we pay a portion of the policy, or we pay the full policy in fiscal year 2021, but a portion of the coverage goes into fiscal year 21-22. So we make an adjustment for this account of about $40,000, which is captured for the next fiscal year as an expense. So this, when we go through the fiscal year end budget versus actual as compared with the audit, you'll see that this item is going to be less than what it's showing now. Okay, so once again, we talk about the various items which are over budget, and the larger line item, as we talked about, employment legal fees as well as insurance premiums. Okay, now we're going into collections. Once again, the revenue for this is at 100%. The differences come into the pass-through costs. SAM grosses up both the revenues and the expenditures. It's easier to do that as opposed to netting it, which we believe that showing it in this manner in terms of the gross, capturing a full amount of the pass-through cost and calling that revenue, and the full amount of the expense and calling that an expense, as opposed to netting on the revenue or the expenditure side. I said this gives more clarity, and from an accounting point of view, I think it gives more meaningful information as opposed to just eliminating a revenue or an expense. So that's the way we do it, and that's why you'll see the variance there, about $90,000. This is the discussion.
Consistent with how it's been done in the recent past too.
Yes, thank you, George. Appreciate that. Okay. Yes. So and then this is just more of disclosure of who the pass-through costs are going through. A Montera being the larger amount of $90,000, GCSD $5,400, and then Half Moon Bay is a little over $1,000. Okay, and expense-wise, the collection expense for this year has been lower than lower than expected, mainly because of what hasn't happened. For the budget cycle for fiscal year 2021, the expectation that a large amount of costs for the rental of various pieces of equipment were going to be in play, and that just hasn't taken place. So that accounts for, he said, about $30, $60, $75,000 of expenditures which have not occurred, and then just the allocation of insurance premiums. Once again, we've gone a few different ways, but the allocation of expenditures, we have not been in that, we have not been keeping with that protocol of previous year. We've been just capturing direct expenses for the collection system. So that's what we've been doing this past fiscal year and the year before. I know we have discussion of making a change going to next fiscal year, or sorry, the current fiscal year that we're a part of, but that is not how it was done for the previous fiscal year. Once again, these are the discussion of what was expected to happen and this is what has not. Like I said, rental expenditures down by $75,000. And that's the end of the presentation. At this point, I would be happy to field any questions. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint up. So when I do that, my view to see the audience is very limited. So if you just kind of speak up, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Peter, could you put the summary page back up?
Summary page for
the overall.
Well, the one that we have in the board report, I do not have handy. So the one this in the board packet. I don't have that on my laptop right now. I'm sorry. Kishan, Kishan or George, can you pull it up,
Well,
please?
then let's go back just to gallery view then.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
I will.
I think so. If yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I have it here, but I'm sorry. I don't have it on my home office, my daughter's bedroom.
Well, I have a few questions. Does someone else want to ask questions first? Well, one of my questions is about the collections program. I mean, right now, when you look at the overall, it's subsidizing. I realize it's not, but it's subsidizing treatment and so forth by $220,000. The overall budget for this year we're talking about was over by $770,000, correct? Over budget. Plus the subsidy, as it were, of the collections of $220,000. Since we have a completely separate collections budget and it is a contract that is separate from operations and treatment and so forth of SAM, why is it merged in this reporting with the overall SAM numbers? And is it possible to look at it separately since it is a separate contract item?
It's a good question, and I know that we've discussed it both with the committee as well as our team. As far as you're absolutely correct. When I look at this and the way that is booked internally within Tyler, collections and operations are actually booked as two separate funds. The view that we're now looking at for your report is basically capturing all activities and showing them as one fund. I do not disagree with you at all that the display of this report, whereas collections shows as a line item going across for both revenues and expenditures, is creates problematic in the fact that you can really get that misconstrued that yes, the collections operation could either be subsidizing or could be subsidized by O&M. So for that matter, yes, we can show it as, because in our operations, it's actually Fund 300. So we do classify it as a separate fund, which really matters when you get to the balance sheet. But so we don't display a balance sheet. But if we were to show a different fund or show it in a fund view, as far as O&M fund, collections fund, what we would begin to do is then show a fund balance that would either increase or decrease over years, depending on how operations shook out for the year. So it's something that I haven't seen it being done that way or any displays for as far back as I've looked for audited reports. So in the audit, it's always been condensed into one operation. So it would be a discussion between us and the committee. And then the auditors don't really get involved. It's really, we tell the auditors what we're doing and then they audit from that basis. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but it would be a departure from how things have been done, but it's not incorrect.
Does anyone else have an opinion on this? It seems as if it's a separate contract, it should be accounted for separately, and it should not be subsidizing operations. The fact that it's spending less than the budget, just not giving us an accurate picture of the way operating the plant is functioning.
I'm sorry. I wanted to add in one more part. And I talked about this as far as for when the budget was prepared for fiscal year 2021. You got to think about the time frame this was taking place. This was in the spring of 2019. And at that time, the fiscal year before, there was an allocation of indirect costs. That cost allocation has not taken place. So if we were to allocate some costs from O&M for how we're talking about performing for the current fiscal year, that variance would decrease by approximately probably about $50,000 or more.
But that's not what we're doing now.
That is not what we're doing. That has not been our practice over the last 18 months or so.
And just to be clear, when we started and had this conversation with Mays and Kishen in terms of the changeover, we were trying to keep things as much like they were as possible. So that first budget that was introduced, collections did include overheads, and there was a pretty solid pushback to remove the overheads. We did it for that first budget retroactively because we were presenting thinking we were just keeping pace with what was done in the past. And so when we reintroduced this most recent budget, that changed back to no, we do want indirect costs included. So that has put us in kind of a tricky position in terms of how this stuff kind of lags, that we're doing one thing at the bottom level, and then yet when we go to do the budget, being told, okay, let's do it this way. So we could certainly go back through and make journal entries to allocate those costs, which certainly can be done. But that's part of the problem, was that we were trying to keep things as they were, but then it's gone back and forth the last 2 budget years at least. And I know that's
so what you're saying is that allocation of costs, some changes were made in the allocations of cost. That those decisions sounds like you're all happy with. So that doesn't make really any difference to whether you pull the collections reporting out.
Well,
it's just a facet of it.
It is a facet of it, but when you're looking at them individually, if you've pulled costs out, they're only going to go one other place, and that's the general budget. So
that's a different decision, right? Where those costs go. Correct.
And so we're trying to keep pace with the budget in that regard, but obviously it's made it more difficult, which contributes to how much we're out compared to the budget.
In terms of, sorry to cut you off, George.
Okay.
But in terms of the presentation that we're looking at here for your board packet, really nothing would change outside of just pulling apart. So in terms of the major impact that I can see for creating its own or displaying it as its own fund would be in the audit report, because like I said, that would actually track the fund balance. The report that you guys have does not have a discussion of fund balance, and fund balance, in other words, basically saying cash in bank. Cash in bank as it pertains to what portion of it would be collections and what portion of it would be O&M. So from a budgetary perspective, the report that we're reviewing wouldn't change. That variance would still remain the same. And also cash, which is really what we're talking about, that wouldn't change at all, because I said we don't have a collections operating account for which all collections expenditures are paid to and collections revenue coming into. From not the way it works. We use a more of a pool cash system. Basically, we have an operating account, and that has it. So there would be a number of due from transactions. So it's doable, but it's just not the way it's performed now. Sorry, Kishen, I know you had your hand up.
No problem. So if I understand right, what Director Dye is mentioning is, since we already have 2 budgets, one for the general and one for the collection, why don't we have a review also separately, review for the general budget and review for the collections? And we can do that. We can present a sample review, what we'd like to do. We can present it to the finance committee, and if the finance committee agrees to that, for this quarter onwards, we can go ahead with that proposition. So allow us to present it to the finance committee in our next meeting to see how it looks like, whether it's going to confuse or whether it's going to aid, provide assistance. Then we'll follow whatever the committee decides.
That's fine with me. Anyone object to that? Okay. Anyone else have questions? I have another question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Keishan. That sounds like a good way to move this forward.
So Sam spent more than $700,000, actually more than $900,000 over budget for last year, if you take into account the situation with collections. So I'm just curious to ask about a couple of the major expenditures that caused Sam to go over budget. I'm curious to know how much of it was because of the BOD situation and how much of it was due to perhaps other things. And so I just briefly want to ask you what was one of the largest expenditures that was not, at least as how I read the report that we were given, is the digester one recoding. And can you explain what that was and why it was done out of budget, if I'm understanding that correctly?
The digester one recoding is nothing to do with, first clarification, nothing to do with the BOD problem. Whether there was a BOD problem or not, we would have to do the digester one recoding. Now, the digester one was actually earlier budgeted only for cleaning operations. We did the cleaning of the digester, and then we got to inspect the digester by a third party. And upon inspection, we found that a lot of it needs to be recoated because of the way the digester was. We have operated it for so many years. And that's why we had to do the recoding. And that's the extra amount, which is talked about, the $326,000, which is shown in the budget. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it sounds like it's something that needed to be done.
It needed to be done. Budget. Yes, irrespective of whether it was a BOD issue or not. Right. Nothing to do with it.
And this came to the board for approval.
Yes, of course. Yep.
As an expenditure. Okay.
Yep.
And I just
there was an RFP sent out, and I think we picked the apparent lowest bidder and then brought it to the board.
Okay. And the second one is the service calls for plant and SCADA at almost $300,000.
Yep.
Those are unbudgeted.
Yep. Those are ongoing calls for plant and SCADA issues.
It was just under budgeted for
correct
last year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Those are my major questions for tonight.
Yeah. One correction. It's not that 295,000 or 326,000 is an over spent amount. It's just the total amount. The major expenditures is what has been mentioned in the report. Significant expenditures.
Okay. But the bottom line of this report is that SAM operations, treatment, and laboratory, what is it, environment, was $900,000 over budget for the last year.
Correct. Bottom line is, 14% over budget. Yep.
Okay. I mean, and it seems as if the expenditures were all reasonable and to be expected and approved by the board. But I just think it's important to let the public know that we are paying attention to this kind of situation and so forth. So that's where I am. Catherine, did you want to speak to this?
I do. I have been watching the inflation numbers for next year, and I think we need to pay when we start budgeting for 22, 23. Let me see, we're 21, 20, 22, 23.
Correct.
We're going, these half years get me. Anyway, we're going to have to pay close attention to what has been forecast for the inflation, because I think we are going to otherwise we will be into buyer's shock. And on everything from insurance to labor and labor costs. So thank you.
Good point. Thank you. George, did you want to speak?
Yeah, and just to remind everybody, what Peter mentioned right off the top is that these are unaudited numbers. So this is raw data. And we already anticipate, besides the accruals, some stuff is going to be capitalized. So that'll reduce the expenditures in terms of the budget. I mean, it's still money going out. We're well aware of that. But we don't expect to be 14% over budget when the audited numbers come in. Just to be clear.
Okay, good. I'm not sure I quite realized that. Great. And then one last thing, which is that we're working on a capital projects tracking report that will come to the finance committee and come back to the board so we can see how all the various projects are proceeding and moving forward. Correct?
Correct. Yes, we confirm that. We'll bring it to the finance committee and thereafter bring it back to the board.
I think that would be an excellent thing as well, so we can see where we are in that. Anyone else have any other questions on the presentation of the budget versus actual for 2021? All right, moving on.
Right.
General
Thank you,
Manager.
guys.
Do we have a staff recommends that the board receive and file the financial report? So do we need a motion?
I think we do.
So moved.
Yes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Can
Yes,
we have a roll call, please? Sorry, missed that.
Roll call.
Yes, please.
Director Roddick,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye.
Aye.
Very good. Motion passed.
And thank you very much, Peter, for all your hard work, and George for all the hard work that you do on the financials. You do, guys, I know, work really hard, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Trina. And I'm sorry, guys. I have to run, so I'll be falling off the call. But thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, moving on to General Manager's report.
Okay, we have the packet with you guys, but before we go there, I'd like to just share some pictures with you guys. Okay, here's a picture of a front of the SAM office, SAM plant. And this was in the earlier stages. And we got Susie to work on it, starting from here. And it's all her initiative that she brought it from this position to this. Look at this now. This is how SAM plant looks like now. For those of you who haven't been to the plant, okay. Yep. And it's all Susie's initiative. She keeps track of everything, makes sure it gets watered properly, gets everything, all the, whatever needs to be done, everything. So
That's awesome.
yeah. So
That's great.
yep. Let me go to the next picture. So you see this is the conference room where we used to have our board meetings whenever we have an in-house meeting. And we had this portion, we had a small picnic table, nobody would use it. It was a pretty old table. And we had this space, which was not being utilized at all. So now we've got what's called as a health wellness program, as Sam has got into the health wellness program with CSRMA. And we've introduced, number one, we've introduced what is called as a walking program. And that program is called Guacamole. Now in this Guacamole program, we encourage staff to go on, count their steps every day, and we give small gifts to them at the end of 15 days or at the end of a month. Like it's on an average, if somebody does 6,000 steps per day, for 90,000 steps, we give them a $5 gift card. And for 180,000 steps in a month, we give them a $10 gift card. So this is to encourage the staff to walk around, keep themselves fit. And this program is in place. It's called Guacamole. And to go further on the health wellness program, we decided to make use of this space. And I don't know how many of you are aware that CSRMA reimburses a lot of money for equipment, for exercise equipment and stuff like that. So we went ahead and converted this extra space to a shed like this. And this place is going to be used for a treadmill. We've already placed an order for a treadmill, and that's going to come in this position. And the treadmill, it costs about $1,500, and we're going to get it reimbursed, except for the taxes, of course, $1,500 plus tax, I think, approximately. We're going to get almost the entire amount reimbursed by CSRMA in the scheme that they've got. So this is going to be, we've already ordered for it. It's going to come in this week sometime. And this is the space we've utilized for whatever was just not being utilized. We built that shed and we've got this now. Okay, now don't get scared. This is a room which has got a number 1 water pump and a number 2 water pumps. This houses the pumps out there, and this was in a pretty bad shape. You see all the paint peeling off, and you will see further off that the walls are in bad shape. This is with the pumps removed. This is in transit. But you see here, everything was in a bad shape. We had these valves and all that, pretty old valves, rusted. And this was actually the 1 water and 2 water pumps. These are 1 water is basically potable water, and 2 water is a water which goes all along to the various requirements in the plant. So for the past few weeks, we've been working on it, and we've changed this entire room and made it look like this, changed all the piping, changed the pumps, and this is how it looks right now. We've got all these conduits and pipes and all these well laid out. The walls are painted, the roof is painted, and everything looks like this now with new pipes, new pumps, new motors, new pipes, new conduits, walls painted. And this has been totally remodeled and it looks great. So for some of you who come to the plant, I'll get you guys to have a look at it physically. So I just wanted to share these things, few developments before and after which has been happening in the plant. And this is what it is. And staff is here to answer any questions that you have on our monthly reports.
Great work. I think that's great to get people exercising. Well done. And the
Marie Kondo would be proud.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Marie Kondo would be very proud of you all.
So is replacing those pumps part of the CIP program?
No, it is not part of the CIP program. It was not that expensive for us to replace it, so we didn't bring it into CIP.
Right. No. And you are doing improvements regularly at the plant now.
Yes. Yes, I think Director Clark has a question, I guess.
Matthew, did you want to, Director Clark?
Yes, we certainly heard about tank 1 and 2 earlier tonight, and you just mentioned, Kishan, and shown us the improvements, and I believe you just mentioned that had to do with tanks 1 and 2 as well. My question is, why are those tanks not within the SCADA system? And shouldn't they be?
Yeah, it's the number 1 water and number 2 water pumps. The pumps are on SCADA.
How about the tanks?
No, it's a water tank.
It's 1 tank and it is on a SCADA, the level.
I didn't understand that. Excuse me.
The level controller is on a SCADA.
Yeah. So
the level controller malfunctions like any other level controller. So it doesn't give you the accurate level. This is an equipment which has failed. You have these level controllers in wet wells, which gives you the level, and then that leads the pump to either start or stop. So it's one of those level controllers which are in the tank, which is connected to the SCADA. Does it answer your question, Director Clark?
So it's the actual device that provides the information to the SCADA that failed?
Correct.
Yep.
It's a pressure transducer is what it is that failed.
We don't want another Chernobyl.
No.
But we don't have any radioactive either.
That pressure meter or whatever you said has been fixed or will be fixed soon?
It's been fixed. It was fixed.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
I think it's terrific that things are getting cleaned up and fixed all around the plant as part of ongoing operations and also as part of the CIP. So great work. Any other comments on the manager's report? I actually wanted to just ask one question on the manager's report about the Princeton wet well cleaning, because that sounded like a big deal. And I wondered if you could just tell us about what that entailed and why you did it.
Tim, would you like to comment?
Yeah, the Princeton wet well cleaning, the way the Princeton pump station, the design of it, it just traps grease there, which Which we think, I mean, it's probably part of the problem. We don't really know for sure that, you know, what's going on out there, but we know it definitely traps grease there, just the way that the wet well works. We can't clean it out real well. So every time we do have to clean it out, it's a confined space. So that's why we had to get the A1 septic trucks to come, and it takes a good portion of the staff to be able to do a confined space, because we have, we'll have, you know, one person come in to the confined space, and then we don't want him to be in there for a long amount of time. So we'll pull him out. We'll have someone else going in as they're vacuuming all the grease and everything out of the wet well. Then since we've been having some of the filaments seem to like grease at the treatment plant, we didn't want those. We didn't want the discharge to go back to the treatment plant. So everything that was cleaned out of that wet well was actually taken off site, and it went over to East Bay Mud, to where that was disposed of there. So we were just trying to get all the grease and everything that's in that wet well up and out. A lot of the newer wet wells, they're smaller, and the design is as such that it's easier for us to clean out with the equipment we have. But Princeton, I've told you guys before, when I started almost 35 years ago, we were gonna replace the Princeton pump station, so we didn't want to put any money into it. And here we are 35 years later, and it's pretty much the same station.
Just got cleaned out anyway, so thank you.
It's been cleaned out.
Yeah, and one additional thing I'd like to mention is for those of you who had witnessed the odor control unit at Portola pump station, we've actually moved it to Princeton pump station, and not because of odor control, but because of the fog issue. That equipment also takes care of fog issues. So we've just installed it last week. We still cannot conclude whether it has helped in fog, but I believe it has helped in the fats, oils, and greases at several other places. So we're just monitoring that and seeing whether it gives any relief for the Princeton pump station fog buildup.
And are you going to get the duplicate back at Portola?
Not as yet. I need to, a pilot trial period is over. So we intend discussing with the member agency managers, and if it's acceptable, then we bring it to the board for approval to go ahead and buy the unit.
Thank you. Matthew, did you want to speak? And then Catherine?
Yes. Is the Princeton pump station wet well on a regular schedule for cleaning? And when was the last time previously that it was cleaned?
The Princeton pump station.
You want to go ahead, Kishan? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, so the short answer is no, it's not on a real regular schedule for cleaning, because we need pretty much all the staff there. So we try to get to it at least once a year, like the other stations, like Montera and Portola. Last year, obviously, nothing really happened. So it's been a couple years.
So it was, and you've already said this, basically, it was unusually full of grease.
Yeah, it's been an accumulation. And like I said, Princeton, the interesting thing about the Princeton wet well, after the guys cleaned it, they even said, they went back like the next day, 2 days later, and they told me, they're like, my God, you can hardly even tell that it was clean, because, you know, so much grease accumulation just came back in there. It's really the design of the wet well. It's kind of problematic. It has been problematic for a number of years.
My next question is, as the non-domestic waste source control program is being reactivated, will that include cleaning that pump station more often, or will full implementation of the program again address the sources of the grease that end up in that location, and therefore lessen the amount of grease that comes in?
You want that, Kishan? You want me to take that?
Actually, it's nothing to do with the non-domestic waste source control program implementation. We're already trying to pursue changing the Princeton pump station to a packaged pump station, and that is the best solution, so that we can avoid all the confined space working, make it more safe for our employees, and at the same time ensure that the fog doesn't build up. So that is our ultimate goal, which we plan on doing it for the next CIP, which which has already been projected to also, the third party saying that we intend doing that in the next few years. So we'd like to expedite that and bring it to the board for the next year's CIP.
How will that approach lessen the sources that put the grease into the pump station?
Yeah, because Tim, you want to take it? How the package pump station is easy to clean and maintain it, because the way the Princeton pump station wet well is constructed makes it difficult to clean, number one, and makes it also impossible to clean it completely. So a lot of fog, a lot of fat, soil, and grease remains in place in spite of the cleaning.
The smaller stations, we can get in there with our Vector equipment and we can suck it out, and we have a bin that we can dump it into, and then we dump it into this bin, we de-water it all out, and then it's a little labor intensive, but then we shovel all the grease out and we put it in a hopper and it goes off site.
My question addressed the sources of the fog that gets in there. Obviously, that station doesn't generate it itself.
No, that station does not generate it. It would, yeah, with the fog control program, different than the NWSCP, as Kishan pointed out.
What part of it?
Yeah, that's the part where hopefully people going out and they'll sort of be more responsive. And I mean, all we can do is hope, right? That's all we have is hope.
Okay.
Anything more? Catherine has her hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. Kim, you said that Princeton Pump Station was created, was here 35 years ago.
Yeah,
Am I correct?
Yeah, Princeton Pump Station was there when it was very much in the same, sort of overall look as when I started 35 years ago. Yeah, the actual pump station or the treatment plant for Granada, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was a little bit further up the road towards the radar station. That's what I recall, anyhow. I wasn't here when that station was there.
So that Princeton Pump Station was engineered probably 60, 70 years ago. It was sort of a standard engineering.
I don't know when the actual installation of that station was, so I'm not going to venture.
But it was, okay, I'm assuming it was an old design.
Go with that.
And something that has happened since that design is we have gone from 3 to 5 gallons per flush and 50 gallons per laundry load, or 30 gallons per dishwasher, and long, luxurious, wet, warm showers to sort of splash and dash for just about everything. And the toilet flush is now down to 0.8 of a liter, which is sort of like 5% of the 5 gallons or somewhere in there. I don't do math in my head. But just saying that it was designed for an entirely different flow situation. And so it can't function under this extreme drought and without enough water to push stuff through the way it should. And it should be, in my opinion, we've been talking about replacing it as long as I've been on Montera. And then the other
Kishan just said it's on the list to, he's going to be bringing us for replacement. We need to, I'm not sure I brought this up, and I apologize that we ended up in a long discussion of this, but I don't think this is really where we need to be. Catherine, do you want to?
I'll be quiet, but thank you, Barbara, for interrupting me and not letting me finish.
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
Thank you. My whole point is that even the regular cleaning of it, it's labor intensive. And when you bring forward the replacing it, Kishan, why don't you put in what it would cost us on a regular cleaning schedule, say every 6 months, for the labor and all the other costs, and also the extra insurance, because going into a confined space is also life-threatening. So I think if we were to look at this clearly, we need to be going back and looking at comparing what not only what the cost of new is, but what the keeping the antiquated costs us.
Yeah, we'll keep it in mind. Director Slater, thank you.
Anything further? Moving on to attorney's report.
Yes, thank you, directors. Just real quick to follow up, after the discussion we had at the beginning of the meeting, I will be meeting with Christopher Boucher, and we'll seek to address some of the points that were made. So I probably have to listen to the discussion over again. It's recorded, but we will keep you posted on that. Let's talk about AB 361, which is the bill that continues the ability of public agencies to meet virtually. The upside is there is the ability to do that. The downside is there are quite a few more restrictions on how you do it. And so it's not quite as easy, and certain findings have to be made. I provided a memo to the board earlier today. You can read it whenever you wish. But I'm going to go over a couple of issues right now. And could I share screen? If that's, Kishan, if you can let me do that.
Yep, you can share your screen.
Okay. So this is, here we are. Did everybody see the memo?
No, you can see your screen.
How about where it says memorandum? Okay, very good. Okay, so AB 361, essentially, there's a couple of kind of key elements to be able to continue to have virtual meetings. What this bill does is it eliminates some of the things that that would otherwise be required under the Brown Act associated with having teleconference meetings. So during normal times, if you were going to have if someone was going to participate remotely, wherever they were participating, you'd have to have an agenda posted, specifically on the agenda saying where that person was going to be. The public would have to be allowed to come to that location. So if your remote location was your living room, the public would have the right to participate in your living room. A quorum of the members would have to still be within the boundaries of the agency. And so all those things, and I know during COVID, people have worked remotely from all over the state and all over the country. So all of those things can still be done, but they require certain findings if they're going to happen. So the first thing is there has to be a continued state of emergency. And I thought when I first started looking at this, it's like, well, there can't be a state of emergency because the governor, said we're reopening the state back in June, right? But I was wrong. The governor he had the whole reopening, and the blueprint for California was rescinded back in May, but the state of emergency remained. And so as of March 4th, 2020, there still is that element is still there. So that's not an issue. So there must be a continued state of emergency, and one of the following circumstances in order to be able to continue to do virtual meetings must exist. The first, it has to be one of these. So you don't have to have all of them. One is the state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing. Okay, so the state hasn't done it. CDPH, I looked on the California Department of Public Health, I looked on their website, and there doesn't seem to be any requirement for social distancing right now. There was before, it was rescinded. Some county health officers have continued the requirement for social distancing to continue. For example, in Orange County, I have agencies in Orange County. There is a recommendation from the county health officer that indoor meetings, that there be social distancing, and that large crowded meetings be held outdoors. And so those recommendations are still there. I didn't see that for San Mateo County. And so right now the San Mateo County is much more stringent than a lot of the rest of the state in the sense that their indoor masking is required, but there is not a requirement that I've seen, and people can correct me on this, for social distancing indoors. So I'm not sure we can meet that requirement. So we need to go to the next one. We need to be able to look at the next criteria, which is the meeting, and we need to do this at the next October board meeting, would be the meeting is held to determine by a majority vote whether as a result of the emergency, meeting in person would result in imminent risks to health or safety of attendees. And so that is essentially, and then the third one is if you've already made that finding in the past, then you'd be able to rely on that. So by a majority vote, Sam would have to vote to make a finding that as a result of the emergency that's still existing, which we talked about since March of 2020, meeting in person would present imminent risk to health or safety of attendees, which I think the board could find if so inclined. You could find that, the Delta variant, there are still uninfected persons and unvaccinated persons, and attending a meeting in person could result in imminent risk to them. And so that's a finding that could be made. But we would have to make that at the next board meeting in order to be able to continue to have, continue virtually after that. Subsequently, if the board decided to do that, then at meetings after that, every 30 days thereafter, the board would have to determine that one, that you've reconsidered the circumstances and the state of emergency still exists, and that one of the following circumstances exist. Either the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of the members to meet safely in person, or state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. So basically, if we were going to continue after the initial meeting or after 30 days, we would probably need to have something on consent. It could be just it wouldn't have to be a resolution, just a finding on consent that the agency has considered the circumstances, reconsider the circumstances, and that the circumstances that led to the initial determination of possible imminent risk still exist. So that's what we would need to do. And if we do that, then we'd be able to continue to have virtual meetings. There are new requirements with AB 361. There's requirements for notice that we're doing all the things that are listed in 4A, B, and C, as you can see on your screen. Sam's already doing all of those. And so particularly with school boards, it seems like a lot of those, there are some agencies which weren't allowing the public to participate directly. This agency has done that. And so I don't think anything that is required under 361 is going to change the way our meetings flow with virtual participation. So that shouldn't be an issue. So with that, I'll shut up and take any questions folks might have.
Catherine. Your hand is still up. Rick.
Is that on the agenda for the next meeting in October?
It will be.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we haven't made it yet.
I have a question. Does this have any relationship to a decision that the city, because the SAM headquarters is in Half Moon Bay, that the city may have made?
Well,
if the city says it's a continuing health hazard, can Sam just say, well, if the city says so, how can we argue?
That could potentially be done. Yeah. I mean, that typically it's the county health officer who's in charge of making those kinds of determinations. But I think based on my reading of the statute, it has to be state or local officials, and a city has police power. And so if the city of Half Moon Bay were to say that social distancing is required, I don't know if that's true or not. I did look on the city's website. I didn't see anything. A lot of the information on the city's website was a little older. information I saw from San Mateo County was August and September of this year, and so it was more current.
We wouldn't take action till our next meeting, right? So this will be on our next agenda. So your memo is a really good background for all of us.
That's correct. I just wanted to make sure you all knew. I mean, it's a big topic of conversation, so I wanted folks to know what was going on and to be thinking about it.
And I have one more question, very quick. A public commentator earlier this evening felt that the special meeting for which we gave more than 24 hours notice was not in the interest of transparency. But I wanted to make sure that we were following the legal requirements to declare a special meeting.
Yes, I mean, I believe we followed all legal requirements. I mean, it's 24 hours, and we followed our normal process for that. So, you know, we're always free to give more than 24 hours notice. That's something that can be done.
We did obey the law.
We did obey the law, and given when the managers meeting was, we gave notice as soon as was reasonably possible to put together the meeting and conform to the legal standards. So, and the answer is yes. So thank you.
Yes.
All right. We're going to have more on this next meeting. So anything further on this?
No, and I have nothing else to report.
Thank you very much. Moving on to director's reports. Matthew, did you have a director's report?
I just have a comment that there was something in the general manager's report that we all saw that is important and was good. And I think it would be nice to mention it to the public out loud. And that is that the month of August saw no exceedances. And I believe we're still on that roll, that the plant is functioning as it should, and we're without violations. So that's something the public should hear when it happens.
Yes, excellent. Good point, Matthew. I meant to bring that up also. Congratulations. Well done, Tim and Kishan and Gabriel and everyone else involved. Thank you, Matthew. That was good. Topics for future board consideration? Seeing no interest in discussing this, moving on, I guess, to closed session then.
I don't have a need for a closed session unless Kishan has things he needs to talk about in closed session.
Nope, I don't have any too.
All right, then I think, is there anything further? I actually didn't print out anything below item 9. So is there anything further on the agenda that we need to deal with?
No, I can't think of anything else.
Thank you, everyone. Another good meeting. Well done. And we will see you in October.
October 25th.
Oops, I see Deborah Penrose is she's saying goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.